Hi guys, this week's challenge is all about fabric. I'm going to show you some of the ways that I've used fabric in productions, but I'm also going to show you one of my favorite hobbies, which is making graphic tees. And that's going to be your challenge this week, making t-shirts. In technical theater, we use fabric in all kinds of ways. We use it as masking, we use it as a projection surface to hold light or an image. We also use it to create really interesting forms and textures. And I'm going to show you some of the ways that I have manipulated fabric for productions, but I'm also going to show you how I've used my skills with fabric to create some really cool t-shirts. A couple of years ago, I did a project where the designer wanted to create really large panels of tie-dyed fabric. Well, in order to do that, we had to dye the fabric ourselves. We did a process called ice dyeing. And in ice dyeing, you use a powdered dye with melting ice over fabric to create the really interesting textures and depth of color that you want. So to do that, I had to build giant troughs. The troughs allowed the fabric to sit above a reservoir and let the ice melt into the reservoir so the fabric wouldn't be sitting in water. The dye was applied to the top of the ice, and as it melted, it created all of these really interesting textures, kind of like tie-dye. After the fabric dried and the dye was set, we cut all the fabric into pieces and we sewed together these large panels that we draped over the house in the theater. We also covered large portions of the set with the fabric, and we created these giant mountains in the background, all done with fabric. But now I want to talk about graphic tees. I love printing t-shirts. It's one of my favorite hobbies, and I have made shirts as gifts for lots of friends and family members, and I make them for myself all the time. For our production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, we took a modern approach, and for one of the characters, we wanted him to feel kind of like a frat boy. So I printed a shirt in Greek letters that said Bay. I did that using a technique called silkscreen. Silkscreening requires a lot of equipment, time, and chemicals. You first have to prepare the screen, you have to prepare the image, you have to be able to understand what kind of ink will work, and it's all very tedious. There's a lot of setup and a lot of cleanup involved, but the results are pretty good. The next shirt I made was for our production of The Theory of Relativity. We had a student designer who designed a really interesting graphic, but I didn't want to go through the process of silkscreening because it's better if you have multiple prints to make. It's a lot of preparation for just one shirt. So I decided to do the Ironon Vinyl using my Cricut. The Cricut cuts the design out of vinyl. Now to do that, you have to have a good understanding of the software involved, and you have to understand how to set up your Cricut and the proper blades to use and everything like that. It's not as tedious as using a silkscreen, and the results are a lot cleaner and a lot faster. So I was really happy with how that t-shirt turned out. But now I'm going to show you the 3 ways that you can attempt to make a t-shirt at home. The first process is printing your own graphic. The second is drawing with Sharpies, and the third is painting with bleach. Now to print your graphic, you first have to find an image that you like and print it out. It can be in color or in black and white. You can leave it a square, or you can cut out an interesting shape like I have. The next step is wrapping your image in saran wrap or cling wrap. Here I have folded everything back on the back side, and I've trimmed it to the shape of my drawing. Next, you want to iron the image onto your shirt. To do that, I used the front of a cereal box as a surface to iron on. I ironed the shirt a little bit to get it warm before I put my image down. I carefully centered the image, and then I used a piece of parchment paper to put over the image. This prevents your iron from sticking to the cling wrap. You want to iron for a good solid 5 minutes. Then after you've ironed, you can check your image to see if it's stuck. If it's not, you can iron a little bit more. But after you're all done, you have a nice, bright, shiny new graphic tee. The next step I want to look at is drawing with a Sharpie. I recommend that you practice drawing before you jump into your t-shirt. Again, I put a piece of cardboard underneath the shirt to prevent any sort of ink bleed, and it gives it a nice smooth surface to draw on. Once you have your image, you want to do what's called heat setting. You want to use a hot iron with no steam to quickly set the ink into your shirt, and then you want to immediately rinse it off with cold water. And then you can hang up to dry. The last thing I want to show you is painting with bleach. Now, if you're working with bleach, you want to do it in a well-ventilated area or you want to do it outside. You also want to wear old clothes and understand that anything you get bleach on, you might ruin. You can paint with bleach with a paintbrush, but you want to make sure, however you're using it, you want to dilute it. So I'm doing a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 part bleach to 1 part water, and I'm pouring it in a small spray bottle. Now because I'm using bleach, I want to see a dramatic effect. So I'm using a dark t-shirt. If you're using a dark shirt, you will get higher contrast out of the bleach. The first thing I did was create a stencil, and I'm using the spray bottle to spray around the stencil. I'm also spraying into my hand a little bit and slinging the drops of bleach on to add a little more texture. I'm wearing gloves and I'm doing this outside. Now because the bleach is outside and it's in the sunlight, it's going to react really quickly. If you let the bleach sit on your shirts too long, it could eat through the fabric. Now, once you get the desired look that you want to immediately hose it down with cold water. While you're at it, you might as well fill the bird bath. Now, the final step is washing and drying your t-shirts. This is really going to set the image the way it's going to be, but you want to make sure you wash it separately from any other clothes, so do a small load. So let's take a look at how they turned out. The Sharpie held pretty well. I think the bleach looks fantastic, but unfortunately the paper graphic tee did not hold up in the washer and dryer. So if you have a one-off design that you want to make, I say go for it, but understand you cannot wash and dry it very successfully. Well, 2 out of 3 isn't bad. I like the way the bleach turned out. I think that's probably my favorite process, and I'm going to continue experimenting with that to get different results. So I look forward to seeing your work, and good luck.